This morning I am in Philadelphia visiting with Michelle Cosby, who is the director of the Law Library and an associate professor of law at Temple University's Beasley School of Law. Michelle, in addition to thanking you for allowing me to come here today to your nice library, which is beautiful to see, and this room especially that we're in, I want to also mention that I have the distinct honor of talking to the esteemed president of the association, AELL. Normally I've talked to a lot of presidents, but they've been former presidents. Your time is very precious, so I very much appreciate you being able to fit me in on this trip.
Well, thank you for stopping by. I'm very honored to be interviewed.
Thank you. Well, I think most people feel it's an honor. I hope it is. I've had a few who've said, no, they're not really inclined, but that's reality. Not everybody wants to show up online, I guess. It's our custom, Michelle, to begin the conversations by learning a little bit about you as a person, a human being, in addition to being a law library director and all these sort of things. Could you tell us a little bit about your life? Not only today, but perhaps when you were younger as well.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Indiana. I was born and raised there. I have two sisters, but they are a lot older, so they were out of the house by the time I was 10 years old. So I was very active in music when I was younger. I was part of marching band, jazz band, all kinds of band. Loved it to the point that my first undergraduate degree was music education. But then while I was there, I realized I love music, but I don't love practicing this much. So switched my major and eventually graduated with a degree in sociology and went on to law school from there. So since I've been working professionally, I've moved around some, looking for my next opportunity. Pretty early on, I knew I wanted to be a library director, so I tried to apply for jobs that I thought would help me get the skills to do that. So started my
sort of word on the way up.
Yes.
Very smart, I think.
Yeah. So I haven't lived in Philadelphia that long. I just moved here at the end of May. I live in a community called Ardmore, which is on the outskirts of Philadelphia. It's a very walkable community. It has really nice Whole Foods. And then I haven't gotten into the commuting through the public transit just yet, so I still drive into work. So that's been good. And so that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Having over the last few hours endured a little of the traffic in this town, I imagine commuting at rush hour is another world. You don't probably find that enjoyable.
Yeah, it's not where I'm coming from. It's not too bad.
Oh, good.
But going home every day, then it usually takes about 15 extra minutes to get home during rush hour. So yeah,
That doesn't sound too awful.
yeah, it's not too bad. It's a surprisingly easy city to get around if you're going against the popular traffic. So yeah.
That's good. You mentioned your being in jazz band and marching band.
Yeah.
I have a grandson who's a sophomore in college, high school right now, and that's his thing. He and his friends, and they just had a trip to Bavaria, and they actually gave 3 concerts in different places over there. It's every 4 years his school does this.
Yeah.
And of course, they've all known about it coming up through the earlier grades. That would they get to do this once if the parents can afford it, and just were able to figure out how to do it. So
we did do some traveling. We did not get to go abroad any, but traveled some to Tennessee. We did some shows in Gatlinburg. We did some in Missouri. The marching band did some trips to Orlando, Florida. So there was some travel for us. And I played the tenor sax, so it's a medium-sized instrument, and it was a really fun time. We made great friends, and some of them are still my friends today.
That's what I've been told. That Jonathan will bond with the people who are in the band, and that'll be his group, and it's really worked out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, he enjoys it very much, and they travel as well, mostly around the state of Michigan where he lives. And, but I think they're down in Georgia sometime around now for some jazz thing.
All right.
So-
I went to Indiana in November of this year, and so I looked up what the marching band was doing for my school, and I have sadly found out that the performing arts aren't as big as they used to be when I was there.
That's too
So,
bad.
yeah, so they have merged two schools' marching bands together.
Oh.
And, back in the heyday, we were competing in several Indiana
Yeah,
locations.
I see that with him.
Yeah.
And his group.
So, I really think that, I have an appreciation for the performing arts, and I think can really help, children develop.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose I would list that as a passion, a special passion, but I normally ask, and I will.
Yeah.
If you have any other hobbies or other special passions or activities that sort of you spend time on these days.
Yeah, so these days I really like going to cooking classes. I also like doing the wine tastings or different spirit tastings, learning about those. There's this company called Painting with a Twist, and I love it and hate it all at the same time. I am a terrible painter, but it's like that good kind of anxiety, that adrenaline rush trying to do this, to get the painting that you only have 2 hours, and that's been really fun. Another thing more recent that I've gotten into are escape rooms. I love going to escape rooms. I think it helps, show how people work together and to escape the room. And also, though, it challenges your brain because you have to think about it. So it's fun, it's challenging, keeps you active. And I've done a couple of those. I haven't had the chance to do any in Philadelphia yet, but I'm hoping to organize a library team building to an escape room.
Well, you certainly have a large repertoire of possible people to be part of that.
Yeah.
Here in this city, it's a big place.
Right, and one of the other local libraries actually did an escape room, so it was related to looking at different research tasks, and that's how you got to escape the room. So that was interesting, yeah.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned a few moments ago that you have an undergraduate degree in sociology.
Yeah.
And I know you have a law degree, but you have 3 degrees from what I found in doing a little background checking. And
Yeah.
would you like to tell us about all of them and where you got them and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I got my undergraduate degree from Butler University, which is a small private school in Indianapolis, Indiana. I loved my time at Butler. I lived on campus, participated in all of the, typical undergraduate activities. But I thought it was the right size for me. I remember going to look at some of the larger Indiana universities, such as Purdue, and it took us 20 minutes to get across campus in the snow, and I was like, this is too much for me. And the classes were huge. We sat in a class, there was 100 people in the class, and at Butler, maybe my largest class had 40 people in it, so I felt
That
more
kind of
like a
experience is very special. I mean,
Yeah.
these huge lecture classes, and then you probably have TAs grading everything
Right,
and working with you. It's a different world.
I agree. And after that, I decided my junior year I wanted to go to law school, so I met with the pre-law advisor, and she told me I need to take the LSAT, so did that and applied to a couple of schools, and decided to go to Indiana University. At the time, they were not the Maurer School of Law, which they are now, but still, that's where I went in Bloomington, Indiana, and that was a great experience as well. I really loved my time there. And while I was there, that's how I got my 3rd degree of Master's in Library Science, because I was in my research class, and our librarian came in and she said, "You seem to have a retention of this material. Have you thought about the joint degree in Law and Library Science?" Her name is Jennifer Morgan, and she told me more about it, and I was like, okay, because having good research skills for law school is not bad anyways. And then I started taking those classes. So when you do the joint degree, your first year of law school, it's the same. You just have the 1 year of law school. But then after that, I got to pick my classes, so I usually had 3 law school classes and 2 library school classes at any one time, and they were very different. Law school was very intimidating, and library school, I just felt more at ease and like I could
kept
breathe.
You sane.
Yeah, it kept me sane. Yeah, but they were long blocks of time. They were about 3-hour classes, and it was still back when it was brick and mortar library school. There was no online options at the time.
Yeah.
So walking over to the library school and sitting in the long classes, and I usually had to take my classes in the evening just because of the way the law school was structured at the time. Most of those were during the day. So. And then I graduated in 2006. So when you do the joint degree, it becomes a 4-year degree instead of 3 years of law school and 2 years of library science school.
So you came out minted with a double set of degrees and job prospects.
Job prospects,
yeah.
Yes.
So you up and left it. You passed the bar and got admitted to the practice. And,
yes.
But then you moved to Miami area
I did.
in Florida.
Yeah.
Near the swamps with the snakes and so on.
and the alligators.
That must have been a change.
It was a change. It was. There really are just alligators around, especially on the campus. I worked at the University of Miami, which has a huge lake in the center of the campus. So alligators were just sunning themselves, and no one was bothered by them.
And not eating any passing law librarians. I did an interview one time at one of the schools up the north end of that state, and I was cautioned there was a beautiful pond across the road from where I was parked, and I said, don't go too close to that, there are alligators in there.
Yeah, they're everywhere. And
I took it on faith that I didn't want to go overlook.
I think the other wildlife, for lack of a better term, I was not ready for were iguanas.
Oh, yeah.
And they're huge in Miami, and they have claws. They hang out in trees, and again, I'm like, am I the only person bothered by this big iguana?
I suspect not.
Yeah, and I got teased by my coworkers because there's also these little geckos that run around all the time, and they get in your house.
Yeah.
Probably one of my more embarrassing moments living there is one got into my house, and I could not catch it and get rid of it. So I called my coworker, Whitney Curtis, and she lived in Coral Gables, and I lived in Hialeah at the time. So she's driving over 30 minutes. She's like, fine, I will come help you get this out, but you owe me dinner.
I imagine you were happy to pay her back. At least you got rid of it.
I got rid of it. And I don't know, it seemed so big at the time. And now when I see them, I'm like, why was I afraid of that?
Yeah. Oh, well, it's interesting. You were at the library as the Reference Information Service Librarian, I think was the title.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that aspect? It's not quite as adventuresome as chasing geckos out of the house.
Yeah.
But.
So it was a very large library, so I think I learned, how to better hone my reference skills in that library. We worked the reference desk. We had a good number of faculty projects that came in, and it was also my very first exposure to teaching legal research to 1Ls, and that came in as, are you available to teach this class in a couple of days? Sure, I can do.
Hope he'll say yes.
Yeah. So did that and got that experience. And again, back to Whitney, we ended up sharing an office together, and she's still one of my good friends, and so we were able to bounce ideas off of each other.
And if somebody has the same problem you had, you'll know who to recommend.
Right.
That person call.
Absolutely. So, but I realized while I was there, it was too far away from home.
Yeah, I noticed you were there about a year, I think, and then you moved back out of alligator country.
Right.
And out of gecko country.
Out of gecko country,
to University of Kentucky School of Law Library.
So, and that was nice. It was in easy driving distance of both of my parents, who at the time still lived in Indiana. It was a tenure track position, and 3 of us, it was me and Sarah Glassmeyer, and Ryan Valentin pretty much started all at the same time.
Mhm.
So we kind of came up together in that way. And
So your own private
yeah.
cohort of
Yeah,
colleagues.
private cohort, yeah.
So you were reference librarian there,
Yeah.
as I recall.
So a lot more, again, with the faculty projects, but the one thing that was different there than my previous position is for the 1L course, we were adjunct professors for that course.
Okay.
So it was considered additional work, not part of our primary job. So we had 2 sections each of 1Ls that we taught, and it was nice because I felt like I was really getting to know the students then, because I got to see them in a different light than just when they were coming up to their reference desk asking for help. Also, we were part of the we were not an autonomous library at the time I worked there, so we were part of the university library system. So I got to go to the faculty meetings for the university librarians, for all those committees and working groups. And the first time I ever had exposure to a dean of libraries. So I'm learning more about, like, oh, library administration, that's a thing I want to be interested in. So learned more about that. Yeah.
It's nice to be part sometimes of a larger community.
Yeah.
I was at one of my jobs, and it worked well, but we had a really gifted librarian who was in charge of the entire thing, and that made it work.
Right. Yeah.
I guess it could have been something different.
Right.
Sounds like it worked well for you.
Yeah, I liked being a part of the larger community as well. Yeah. The one thing that changed there is we had a circulation supervisor who took a different job in the library. So they divided up her duties amongst me, Ryan, and Sarah. And I got the running the circulation desk part of the duties. So at the time, that was pretty stressful. I was pretty much on call 24/7 whenever the library was open. We opened at 7 a.m. and we closed at midnight. Phone calls on vacation, going back at midnight because there's a problem.
Assistant doesn't show up.
Right, because we were completely staffed. Our circulation desk was completely staffed by students, a mixture of law students and undergrads.
That was very common in my year.
Yeah.
I mean, students did a good job, and they were smart.
Yeah.
And they worked for the low pay.
Yeah, and they worked for the low pay. So, so that's when I started thinking, well, let me find a different job, because this is I very much appreciate what people do who run the circulation desk, but it was not what I wanted to do. So that's when I started looking for other opportunities and found the job, of the newly created position of Faculty Services Librarian at North Carolina Central.
So you were moving back towards alligator country, but I don't think they've gotten that far north yet.
Yeah. So it was warmer, but still you have the 4 seasons. Yeah.
Having lived a little bit north of there in Maryland for quite a while, we used to be aware of the fact that it was getting warmer farther north, and there were certain things moving up in our direction, but they didn't get as far as where I was. Probably didn't get as far as North Carolina, the Durham area either.
Did not have any wildlife problems. I think the most interesting thing that happened when I lived in that time was we got some winds from a hurricane that had hit the coast. So there was one day that it was just very, very windy and kind of dangerous to be outside, but it ended up being a weekend day, so we weren't at work or anything, but it's probably...
Well, at least you weren't down in the tidewater areas and along the ocean, where they do have more than just the wind, usually the tidal surge as well.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing to go through. I'm sure you don't want to do it too often. You can still get them here in Philadelphia.
I heard that. I haven't experienced it yet, but I've heard that can happen.
Usually I think they peter out, hopefully, coming north, and they head out over the Atlantic, but not always.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well. Could you tell us a little bit about anything that you've had? Now you've had 3 jobs when you're at North Carolina Central. You've 3 places. Is there anything in particular that you remember as an accomplishment of any of those jobs that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so
or maybe more than one.
Yeah, with North Carolina Central, really starting the faculty services program from scratch was was a great experience, I thought. We also, I thought, was probably one of the more innovative libraries I worked in. We did not have a whole lot of money, but we managed to make the money we did have work and offering programming for students. We got more involved with the faculty, offering faculty workshops for, Blue Book or SSRN. So I thought we were developing good relationships there. We also had a real life research panel where we brought back alums. Adrienne DeWitt was one of my colleagues at the time, and she had a friend who worked in a big law firm in the area. So, and she was able to bring her in, and then that program just really grew and became one of our more popular offerings that we did every year. I thought that was nice as well. Yeah.
Sounds like you enjoyed your work, your time there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you also taught at all these places, or
Right. Yes.
the legal research type
Yeah.
courses? Did you do any of the legal writing part? Or?
No, always just the legal research part.
Yeah.
So at North Carolina Central, we were the first 6 weeks or so of the second semester of the legal research and writing program. So the struggle there, though, was we had huge classes, anywhere between 60 to 70 students in a skills-based class because we weren't able to offer smaller sections for that. So, but I think that's, again, why we became innovative. We were trying to work on ways that we were still reaching all of these students so that they could learn these skills and have some takeaways from it.
Well, that's important. They don't always recognize it at that point in their careers. All they see it as the hard work and not nearly as flexible on doing it as they might find they are in a regular class. But it pays dividends if they know it when they get out into the real world. And that often comes when they, if they take jobs in their summers between second and first year or second and third year.
Right.
We used to have students come to us at one place I won't mention who didn't, they were light on legal research. The place tended to give them the stuff and they were training them really how to write and use it and analyze it. And they'd come back from a summer job, just panic. Somebody from such and such school saved my, because he showed me how to do all this research. The firm didn't hand it to us on photocopies. Here, you run with the ball.
Yeah.
They wanted you to run with it from the whole way.
Right. And I think that's one of the reasons I got into teaching advanced legal research. And North Carolina Central was the first place that I did that. And it was a summer class and had 10 students, which I thought was great at the time, perfect size.
Yeah.
And they mentioned some of the same, that this is really helping me with my summer work and being, and feeling more confident about it.
So they were a little more motivated. It was probably an elective, too, at that point. The other one is mandated.
Right. Yeah, so they opted into learning more about research. And I think that's one of my favorite students to teach. They have the genuine interest in learning more about it and wanting to be better at it. Yeah.
Well, as you say, the difference between beginning first year scared to death and somebody who's been seasoned a bit longer and settled in and starts to appreciate what they really need to know.
Yeah.
And wants to learn it.
Wants to learn it, yeah.
Well, you left North Carolina Central and moved through the Cumberland Gap. I don't know if you went that way, but I know the highway does, one of them, because I took it once, and ended up in Knoxville at the University of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. Now, you've worked up into a really administrative role at that point. You were associate director, associate law librarian.
Yeah, and that's an amazing opportunity because, as our profession has changed, a lot of times that's a position that's been cut of associate director for the law library.
Yeah.
So the fact that
middle management.
Yeah, middle management has been cut, and I thought it was a golden opportunity because there's not that many middle management jobs of that level left anymore.
That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. And Scott Childs, who was the director there at the time, we overlapped in North Carolina a little bit when he was at UNC before he took the director position. So I had heard about him before, and I was like, I bet I can learn a lot from Scott. So applied for the job, got it, moved to Knoxville, was also a tenure track position there, and
Yeah, you were associate professor.
Yeah.
I see, yeah.
and it was, I think, and also a good experience that I learned more about technical services since my background was in public services. I had two colleagues there, Carol Collins and Loretta Price, who taught me more about that part of the library, and I could appreciate it more, and I thought that was great. And I think it also helped me be a stronger advocate for why we need to protect technical services in the library. But also while there, I was involved in teaching. I learned more about statistics.
See, they knew somebody who knew how to do this, and
Yeah.
I could take advantage of that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And did. And you probably enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did.
Why not?
Yeah. Also got more involved in being active in the university, at the university level. I got to meet the provost. I was on university committees. I was on faculty senate. And just knowing the larger academic community, I thought was a great
I
experience.
imagine that is very enjoyable and sort of empowering in a
Yeah.
sense. I mean, you basically get a view of where everybody else is and why, and
Right.
appreciate seeing
Appreciate it
those
more. Yeah.
differences.
Yeah, and learning more about what are struggles for other types of colleges, and not just what are our library struggles or the College of Law struggles, and so it was a good
Often on
experience.
campuses, there's sort of a tendency by everybody else to have a sort of a distant relationship with the law school. And
Right.
the law school faculty often, that's what they want in the other direction.
Right.
And it's nice to be a bridge, I think, because
Yeah.
you learn a lot and you meet some very good people
Right.
in other disciplines.
Yeah.
And they can appreciate what you in the law school and library are all about too, better by having that
By having that.
kind of
right.
contact, I would think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Mhm. So you also taught, and again, legal research.
Yeah, so there I taught advanced legal research more often than and in the 1L curriculum. So I had between 8 and 10 students for that class. Then I also encouraged one of our newer librarians to develop a law office technology class. So I did not personally teach it, but I thought it was great that we were offering it, and it turns out to be one of our most enrolled classes that the library offered. So I thought that was good for the library. Also while there, we worked on revamping orientation.
Oh.
So I thought that was good because we had this, we went into a session and we were like, here are the rules of the library. Here are your passwords. Use the library. It was just very pointing at them. So we made it more interactive. We invited them into the library. They could walk around and talk with their legal research instructors and talk to a couple of other vendors and actually spend time in the library. And I just thought it was really well received by the students.
Probably a more welcoming type
Yes.
of approach.
Right.
You're going to be, this is going to be a very important place for you for
Right.
the next 3 years. Let's figure out how to make it work best
Right.
for you.
Agreed. Yeah.
Something like that, I guess.
Yeah. And I also enjoyed my time at University of Tennessee. Our dean at the time, Melanie Wilson, I thought was very encouraging. And I felt supported from her, and I felt like she was invested in me as a member of her team. And sometimes librarians can feel disconnected from the rest of the law school.
Years ago, the University of Tennessee Law School was, a law library was actually a branch of the Central Library.
Okay.
And I had the opportunity to interview for a job when I was just getting out of school
Oh, yeah.
there. And I heard, depending on which person I was talking to, the law school had a whole different focus. They wanted the law library to become sort of autonomous, as the American Bar Association was pushing in those days, and probably still is for that. And the director was a crusty old fellow, very interesting, who was very much of a different opinion on that. And I realized that this was not a job I'd better take because I wasn't up for that kind of a fight right out of school.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it would be today, but it was probably still independent of the two libraries in your day there.
Right. Yes, you were in it. Yeah.
I know there was shall we say, a divorce between the two that was tough on one of our colleagues,
Yeah.
who was a good friend of mine, who did take a job there a few years later.
Okay.
And that was what he had to pull off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it was not so easy. Well, then you came here just relatively recently, you're in your first year here at Temple.
great.
And to make matters more interesting, you also have this other day job as president of the association.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you can figure out how to manage all that. You obviously must have some good people here.
Yeah.
They're carrying the ball a little
Yes.
bit more than normal, but
Everyone here has been great, and I let them know, email me, text me, call me. I might not be able to respond right away, but I'll respond to you that day. There's a lot of working on the plane or in hotel rooms. It's been a good experience, though. I mean, double brought a lot of things into my life I probably would not have had the opportunity to do otherwise. For example, I got to go to the International Association for Law Libraries meeting in Sydney, Australia.
Oh.
And going to Australia.
oh, but it wasn't fire season.
It wasn't. The last day we were there, you could smell some burning. But it was just amazing cultural experience, and it felt empowering being in a room of international law librarians, and we all had the same goal, and learning more about the Australian culture was great too.
You'll probably go to the British and Irish Association meeting at some point.
Yeah, I went last year
Or
for
you
that.
brought him into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
That's
we
another
go as
group
vice
that's very
president.
interesting,
Yeah.
I think.
They are, and they were so friendly and
They were
welcoming.
very much.
Yeah. And I still talk to someone that I met from there. She lives in Ireland. So that was a great opportunity as well. And also just going around and traveling and meeting other law librarians and meeting, since I'm an academic, I've gotten to meet more firm librarians and government librarians that I'm not sure I would have met otherwise, because not everyone gets to go to the annual meeting. So meeting some people.
There's also
from
sort of a
locations.
perception, at least there was throughout most of my years as active, that different kind of libraries were very different in what we did vis-a-vis each other. And that's false. I mean, we had an awful lot more in common. And
Yes.
getting to know the firm librarians, the government librarians around where I worked in the DC area, I came to realize that very quickly. That, and I think it's true. And it's good that you're having that kind of experience.
Yeah, it's been
You
good.
meet some of those folks.
Yeah. And working at Temple has been good as
Mhm.
well. We've been working on, making library services more visible to the rest of the law school community. And we've had a really good turnout with that. We started some library pop-ups. That was Charles Perkins' idea. So we leave the library and go to high traffic areas on the second floor or on the first floor where students are, and just give them quick tips about the library, or let them know of upcoming trainings or new acquisitions that they'd be interested in. And I think it's increased our turnout to our lunch and learns as well. So it's been good. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the different floors. You're on the third floor here in the library, at least the main
Yes.
entrance to it. And you're upstairs, I know. Or are you?
Yes, we go up to the 7th floor, I believe. I might be 8th. I'm directionally challenged. No, it's the 7th floor. And so we care for collections through there, but our building's blended. So some of it's library collections, and other parts of it is in other parts of the law school. So yeah, it was
That's
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
An interesting history here. Going back to my real early days in the profession, you had a fire in Temple.
Yeah,
The
they
law
had a
library was
fire.
burned. And, I understand there was more damage from the fire hoses in the water than there was from the
From the
fire.
actual
but
fire.
you had to put the fire out,
Yeah.
or there was more damage from that.
Right. Yeah, and I know, people. I mean, I've heard people talk about it around here as far as what happened during.
Erwin Surrency, who later went down to Georgia as librarian director, he was the director here, or the law librarian as they were called in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm still sometimes referred to as the law library. Yeah.
Well, that's sort of what you really are de facto, as well as all the titles one normally carries these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've been around the profession now, Michelle, a few years.
Yeah.
And Do you count anybody along the way as sort of special mentor, or maybe more than one, if you'd like to mention?
Probably my very, very first mentor was Jennifer Morgan, who I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
She is the government documents librarian at Indiana University at the Maurer School of Law, and I still talk to her to this day. She's the one who got me into the profession. She helped me prepare for my first job talk, and then after I got a job, she helped me, develop exercises for class, and just gave me tips and advice. So she's been a good mentor. Later on, when I put my mind towards management, Femi Cadmus became one of my great mentors, and I think it was her first time on the executive board. I saw her in the exhibit hall, and I said, I want to be like you when I grow up. Like, what can I do?
Well, you became that awfully fast.
Yeah. And then she reached out to me a few days later, and we just started a relationship, and she's given me great advice. Yeah. And I also had success with the AALL mentor program. At one time, I was connected with Carol Watson from Georgia, and she's very helpful too. So those are some three women I think helped me the most. But when I decided I was applying for this job, Scott was very helpful too and encouraging for that.
That's good. Mentors, I think, are very important in a whole variety of good ways. And I can't think of any bad ones.
Yeah, I agree.
At least hopefully they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always helpful. And then you have, well, in addition to everybody, I mean, if you you're stumped by something, you phone, I mean, they still have them, I think, and you can call a person up and talk to them directly, any place around. A colleague and get excellent advice. We've always been very helpful to each other.
Yeah.
Now you can do it other ways, text and emails and perhaps thoughts over the internet or something.
And
I don't think you've gotten that far yet.
Call. We started meeting so a lot of the law library directors in this area are new to being a director in Philadelphia, so we've started meeting periodically, and the other day I picked up the phone to call the director of Villanova and to just talk about an issue, like, what are your thoughts on this? And so I think
you have a lot in common with your counterparts that you don't necessarily have with others, and there's certain things it's better to talk just with each other.
Right.
I remember when they started the academic directors list. That dates me a bit. I think they still have it too. I got kicked off after I retired. We had a rule that you had to be an actual director, active, to be on the thing. So, and that was because we had associates and assistants who were basically aspiring to interconnect with that and sort of learn things while we figured some of the stuff they learned, maybe we didn't want them learning.
Right.
And we felt that by making it private with just the directors, we could be more candid with each other and helpful.
Right.
Yeah. The executive board, same thing. You probably still have a way of back channel communications that are helpful.
Yeah, we still have the directors listserv, and people comment on that. And there's also a newer directors listserv for people who have been a director 5 years or less. So maybe questions you don't want to ask the full directors listserv. So that's been helpful too. I put some questions on that. Yeah.
I remember when I was in a role similar to yours, we were challenged by a colleague that was not on the executive board. We felt that how could we be having private back channel conversations when we're doing business without doing it on the record, perhaps. And I called him up and I explained to him, and I'm being careful not to mention any names for obvious reasons, and what we really used it for. And he said, that makes sense. Never heard again anything about that challenge.
Yeah.
And he was a guy who was fairly aggressive. If he didn't like something, he would speak his mind. Well, speaking of professional service, outside of your, employer base, you have a long track record. You've been president of the Southeastern Chapter of AELL when you Tennessee, I believe, and that was one that used to restrict their membership to the south side of the Potomac River.
Yeah.
And we were on the north side barely, and we would hear about these wonderful events, these programs they were doing, and we aspired to want to go there. And then they expanded the membership, and suddenly I had to come up with more travel money as more as I all wanted to go, and did, and learned a lot. So that was a very active chapter. And you've done a lot of other things. You've been on editorial review boards for Kali. You've served, as you mentioned earlier, faculty senate at one of your schools. And is there any of that you'd like to expand on what I'm saying? I mean, I know that you are in the major role in our association right now, but and perhaps also why it is you take so much time to do this stuff, because it does
take time.
It does take time and effort.
Yeah, so I think I'd also credit Jennifer for that as well. She's saying being active professionally is important. So it probably started as this is something I need to do, and then it turned into something I loved doing.
Yeah.
So when I was at the University of Miami, I applied for my first AA committee appointment. I actually got one. I was on the CRIV committee, and CRIV at the time, they had a lot going on. They were still going out meeting with vendors. We were hosting those roundtables at AALL, and it was just a very interesting committee to be a part of. And I became chair of CRIV at the time during when Lexis stopped putting the CD-ROMs at the back of the book and started doing the e-books, which at the time was very controversial for the professional.
Change.
Yeah, yes, change.
We're used to what we have.
Yeah.
Don't change it.
Yes. So I worked a lot with headquarters. I worked a lot with Lexis, and just for how you communicate that, and I thought that was a really great experience. Everywhere I've worked, I've always been a SEAL member, and I'm still a SEAL member. I pay for my SEAL membership, and SEAL's just a great chapter. It's very active, good programming. There's a lot going on, and
I used to look at the
Yeah.
stuff they were doing, and it was just fantastic.
Right.
Because it was a small version of the national, but a very good-sized small
Right,
version.
yeah, good.
So you could do that sort of thing.
Yeah, agreed.
And they had some interesting, I think one time they had a meeting on a cruise or something.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
That was a ways back.
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody sold that to their dean, but
They worked at the time, yeah.
yeah.
And so I think it's just one of the ways to also stay current and feel, still vibrant in what we're doing. So being active and hearing what other people are doing, networking, meeting new people. But because of it, you also make meaningful connections. So, for example, I spoke with Jenny Wondrasik not that long ago because I know she's very active in legal tech, and I'm going to ABA Tech Show for the first time. And just, called her up, like, can you tell me how this conference works? I've never been. And, I met her through SEAL, and it's just, you can rely on your colleagues. So it's good. Yeah.
Are you active with the Association of American Law Schools, the group of library directors that meets there?
I have gone to the meetings. I've been to 3 AALSs, and I've always gone to the lunches for the law librarians. At the time, I'm still very active in AALL, so I haven't tried to run for the board or anything.
Yeah.
But my very first AALS, I actually had a program accepted. I've not had a program accepted with AALL, so put a panel together, and that was a great experience too.
You need to use
Yeah.
your influence now with the chair of the program committee, at least the next one. Who won't be on your watch, so it won't be nepotism.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I like it. It's a good conference. And at this last conference, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was one of the keynote
I
speakers.
remember seeing that in I get information by email.
Okay.
I guess I'm on the list because I'm still listed in the directory of law teachers.
Yeah.
And, I sit there, that looks interesting. Oh, that's more than we did in my day. I mean, it built, and it became much more of the directors sort of getting together on the side, because
Yeah.
one of the rules we had, and you may still have it at ELL, is that the meetings are open by and large. So we needed to find a venue where a lot of people went,
Right.
where we didn't have that same exact requirement, so we could be candid.
Right.
And ELS provided that for the
A lot of
directors.
them, yeah.
Well, not only that, but you, all this time you spend on all these things, your day job, now you're currently your second day job,
Yeah.
at night job, and professional involvement and so on. You also write, you're an author, scholarship type person.
Yeah.
You want to tell me a little bit about some of that?
Yes, so
And what you get from that?
I have to say with writing, I did it because I had to.
You were in tenure track positions,
Yeah.
they do want to see
They
stuff
want
like
to
that,
see
yeah.
it. I did start writing though at North Carolina Central, just from
Mhm.
advice I got from one of my mentors. If you want to be a library director, you need to be published.
Mhm.
So I had that in the back of my mind as well.
Teaching faculty who
Yeah.
do that themselves, they do look for that in any colleague, and the library director is perceived exactly and correctly as
Right.
a faculty colleague.
Yeah. But I did get a rewarding experience out of writing, so I got the opportunity to write a book chapter, and I thought that was a really good experience, all the
Mhm.
research that went into it, and we had to put in a minimum of 10,000 words, and
Wow.
it was exciting and stressful, but
You
again,
couldn't
to
just
get it.
hammer that out in an afternoon,
Yeah,
huh?
right. So I thought that that was a good experience, and then also just letting people know about what we're doing to see if it works for them. So
Mhm.
I had authored something on adding a roundtable discussion to your interview process. I heard
Mhm.
about another colleague that did it at one of their schools. That was a great idea to see just a different way for the candidate to interact with people that's a
Mhm.
little bit more casual than the presentation. Yeah.
And you get probably a different read on the person.
Right.
You know, what's this person going to be like if we bring them aboard and become a colleague?
Right,
You
yeah.
know, that's important for them as well as all those at the place.
Right, yeah.
You do not want to get into a mismatch if you can avoid it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Also recently wrote on the difference between SOAR and SWOT analysis when you're doing strategic planning.
Uh-huh.
And I just think SOAR is a better way to approach strategic planning for libraries because it's geared more towards helping professions, and we are a helping profession. And so it just frames things a little bit more positively than the SWOT analysis does. So I've tried to, if I'm going to write, at least write on topics that I'm interested in learning more about.
Well, that sounds like you get sort of a double
Yeah.
benefit from that.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I imagine they probably still do when you came into the executive board and into the president, vice president role at ELL, that they have sessions to kind of educate the board members. We had them in my day on how to actually conduct what they do, is contribute.
Right.
And because there's always a tendency for some people to get on a board, they think, well, I have to micromanage everybody else. And you have a wonderful staff, professional staff.
Right,
So
yeah.
they don't need to be micromanaged.
Right,
And you
yeah.
have an executive director who handles that anyhow, if
Mhm.
there's anything needed of a supervisory nature. So do they still have strategic, how to act strategically as a board member type sessions?
We
or-
have a new board orientation, so all
Okay.
new incoming members, along with the SIS council chair and council chair for the chapter of council presidents, all go to this training, so they get an orientation of what it's like to be on the board.
Yeah.
And the president and vice president go to this association conference for ASAE, which is an association about running associations.
Oh, okay.
So we learn
Yeah,
more
we didn't
about
have
that.
that.
Yeah. So we go to that with the executive director, and that's actually a really good experience. And even though not everyone there is a library association, you can learn a lot from what they're going through, what their boards are doing, and get
Okay,
great ideas.
Associations, there's probably a lot of common
Right.
things in
Yeah.
different associations,
Yeah.
and you learn from each other.
Right.
Yeah, sure, why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. And then
Why reinvent the wheel when
Right,
someone's
when
already
someone
built
did
one
it.
for you? The whole cart.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a strategic planning session was it last year? Yeah, last year, because we were updating our strategic plan.
Okay.
Yeah, and then this
Yeah,
year
it's
we just
every several
implemented.
years.
Yeah,
But it needs to be done because
Right.
times change and certain things get accomplished or move, different priorities.
right.
Yeah, that's nice. So headquarters is still in Chicago, I know that.
Yes.
And you get there periodically to meet with them. And, that's,
I feel like Chicago is my second home. I am
I
there
imagine
so
it is.
often.
Yeah. I remember we used to go and Roger was the executive director at the time, Roger Parent, and we'd go out for dinner and stuff, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we still do that. And
Got to know each other in casually as well as in the meetings that way.
Right. And we also do a team building exercise of some sort. So in the past we've gone bowling or we've done a cooking class together. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that I don't remember doing. It sounds interesting and
Yeah.
probably useful. Well, we're probably nearing the conclusion of our conversation today, Michelle, but it's my custom to ask if there's anything we haven't talked about that you would like to bring up. And don't feel this is a test that you have to come up with something, because most people don't. But
So
some
I
do.
actually have something.
Well, good.
Yeah.
You've passed the test that I was trying lines that didn't exist.
Yeah, so I'm actually really excited about our upcoming meeting for AALL in New Orleans.
Yeah.
New Orleans 2007 was my very first librarians conference when I was a full-fledged real librarian, and it feels good to go back there as president.
Is a very special
it's a
city
great
for
city.
meetings.
Yeah. I'm really excited about the theme of unmasking our potential, because I do have this philosophy that I want law librarians to feel empowered to talk about and do what we do.
Mhm.
And I think we have a great keynote speaker with Jim Quick, who's a learning expert and helps you, use your mind to its fullest potential. So I'm excited about that, but more of it feels good to be hosting this meeting when it's what started my career off. Yeah.
So you've come full circle.
Yeah.
In effect.
In effect, yeah.
Well, you probably, over the course of your career, are likely to be back in that town every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's one of those places that people like to meet.
Right.
And, it pays dividends for everybody to pick places like that as best as they can. Yeah. You have a meeting coming up in a few years out in my direction, Portland, I
Yeah.
think, again. And I know I went to
That's-
the last meeting briefly that
Yeah.
was in Portland. I had a little panel presentation, and was then fairly recently retired, so maybe they figured I still knew something that was useful.
Yeah, I remember Portland as well, because I became addicted to Burgerville while we were there.
Burgerville.
I think I ate there every day of the meeting.
There's a burger chain actually out of California called In-N-Out Burger that's very trendy.
Okay.
And it's not Portland, but someplace, I think maybe Eugene or someplace south of Portland, one of the cities, there's one that opened up recently, and it was on the news.
Uh-huh.
They had backups onto Interstate 5. People waiting to go to
to
this
go to
place,
this place.
try it out.
All right, I'll
Yeah.
add it to my list.
Well, listen, if you get down that way and there aren't too many backups. Yeah, it was good. They serve a burger, I think, that doesn't have a bun if you want that version.
Okay.
I tried that one time. I was down doing an interview with Mark Schwartz, who was still around at Davis, California. And we went to lunch at the In-N-Out Burger. He said, "You've got to try this place." I never really knew much about it until then, but it was a lot of fun, as was he. Yeah. Well, so you have, as president of ALL, I imagine you're looking forward in some ways to the meeting, and then, of course, beyond that, working with your successor for a transition and so on.
Right, yeah. So Emily Florio is our current vice president, so be passing the baton to her. So And you'll be meeting with her soon.
I'll be talking with her tomorrow in D.C.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was surprised. I planned this trip for other reasons, but I said, well, I'm going to be back in the D.C. area because I'm living on the West Coast now.
Right.
And I'll try and do a few interviews. And I've picked up several members of your board, your leadership the group I'm doing. Yeah. And it's nice because we want the project to be, sort of forward thinking as well as the old guard.
Yeah.
So we'll talk to them and add them to our oral history. That'll be great. Well, with perhaps that said, Michelle Cosby, I want to thank you for taking time today, and that's a big thing because you have a lot on your plate, including getting back here last night on a plane from a trip, so you and I could talk.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for being part of this oral history and for telling your story to me, and then thanking you. I thank you on my own behalf. And I get the fun of coming and chatting with you, but there are colleagues involved in the background I want to mention, and that's Frank Odek, Michelle Wu, and of course Dick Spinelli, who is now retired from the Hine Company. And they worked with me to develop this oral history of law librarianship for the Spinelli Law Library and Reference Shelf section of Hine Online. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking with me. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.